Captain Kim Han-sol stood on the bridge of the UES Perseverance and stared at the holographic display that had been playing the same message for 3 days straight. The blue light flickered across his tired face as the alien words scrolled past, in their strange script. Below the alien text ran the human translation that had taken their best computers 72 hours to crack. Greetings, primitive carbon-based lifeforms. We, the Velkari Collective, acknowledge your recent emergence into the galactic community. Please remain in your designated solar system while we prepare appropriate containment protocols for your safety and ours. Do not attempt to expand beyond your current territorial limits. Submit all military vessel specifications for review. Disable all faster-than-light weapon systems. A Velkari guidance team will arrive within 30 standard rotations to begin your integration process. The message repeated every 6 hours without fail. No variation, no attempt at actual communication. Just the same condescending announcement over and over again. Communications Officer Park Ji-ho looked up from her console where streams of data flowed across multiple screens. Her dark eyes held the same frustration that Han-sol felt burning in his chest. Captain, we have confirmed the signal is being broadcast to every human colony in 17 different star systems. The same exact message. They are not just talking to us. They are talking to all of humanity. Han-sol walked to the large viewport and gazed out at the stars. Somewhere out there among those points of light were human settlements on worlds that had never known life before humans arrived. Terraforming ships had spent decades making dead rocks into places where children could play under alien suns. Mining operations pulled resources from asteroid belts to build new homes for families. Seeking fresh starts, research stations pushed the boundaries of human knowledge while farmers grew food on worlds billions of kilometers from Earth. All of that work, all of that sacrifice, all of those dreams. And now some alien species wanted to put humanity in a cage and call it safety. Engineer Lee Dong-woo approached carrying a data tablet. His usually calm face showed signs of the stress they all felt. Sir, I have reviewed the technical specifications they transmitted along with their message. They want us to remove the jump drives from all our ships. They want us to shut down our defensive satellites. They want us to send detailed reports on every weapon system we have developed in the past 200 years. What else? Han-sol asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer would not improve his mood. They want us to relocate all human settlements that are within 50 light-years of what they call major trade routes. That includes New Busan, New Tokyo, the entire Centauri colony group, about 40% of human space. Dong-woo shook his head. They say these areas are too valuable for a developing species to occupy. Park Ji-ho turned in her chair to face the captain. Sir, we have been monitoring their transmissions. They refer to us as children throughout their communications protocols. Not metaphorically. They actually classify humanity as a juvenile species requiring supervision. Han-sol felt his hands clench into fists. Humanity had crawled out of the wreckage of old Earth after the climate wars had killed 2 billion people. They had survived the AI rebellion that nearly wiped out all organic life in the solar system. They had endured the Great Plague that turned human colonies into tomb worlds before the cure was found. Every step toward the stars had been paid for in blood and determination, and the absolute refusal to give up when everything seemed hopeless. Sir, what are your orders? Dong-woo asked. The captain turned back to his crew. These people had volunteered to spend their lives exploring the unknown. They had left behind comfortable lives on established worlds to push humanity further into the galaxy. They deserved better than being treated like dangerous children who had found their parents' weapons. Open a channel. All frequencies. Make sure they can hear us loud and clear. Channel open, sir. Han-sol stepped forward and spoke directly to the holographic display as if the aliens were standing right in front of him. This is Captain Kim Han-sol of the United Earthship Perseverance representing the United Human Council. We have received your message and we appreciate your concern for our welfare. However, humanity has been taking care of itself for quite some time now. We are not looking for containment. We are not looking for supervision. We are looking for conversation between equals. We suggest you send representatives who are interested in actual diplomacy rather than issuing ultimatums to species you have never bothered to understand. He paused and looked at his crew. Park Ji-ho gave him an encouraging nod. Dongwu smiled for the first time in days. We are willing to meet with your people to discuss mutual cooperation and peaceful coexistence. But we will not disarm our defenses. We will not abandon our colonies. And we will certainly not accept being treated like children who need adult supervision. Humanity has earned its place among the stars through centuries of struggle and sacrifice. We intend to keep it. Another pause. Hansol thought about all the human families living on distant worlds under foreign stars. Children who had been born in space and had never seen Earth. Farmers and miners and scientists and teachers who had chosen to make their lives in the vast emptiness between worlds because they believed humanity deserved more than just one small planet. We are not asking for special treatment. We are asking for basic respect. Send us diplomats, not social workers. Send us representatives who want to talk, not supervisors who want to control. We have been defending ourselves since before your species knew we existed, and we are quite capable of continuing to do so. But we would prefer to solve this through conversation rather than conflict. He gestured to Park Ji-ho, who nodded and prepared to close the channel. One more thing. The next time you contact us, please remember that we are not primitive carbon-based life forms. We are human beings. We have names and cultures and dreams that are just as valid as yours. If you want to be friends, then treat us like friends. If you want to be neighbors, then respect our property. But if you want to be our parents, then you are going to be very disappointed because we are all grown up now. Message ends. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Hansol looked at his crew and saw his own determination reflected in their faces. Now we wait and see if they are smart enough to listen. 3 days later, they got their answer. The Velkari response arrived exactly 72 hours after Captain Kim Hansol sent his message, and it was not what anyone in human space had expected. Instead of diplomats or military commanders, the aliens sent what could only be described as social workers armed with educational materials and an attitude that made every human who encountered them want to scream. Dr. Choi Min-jun stood before the Emergency Council on Earth and tried to keep his voice level as he delivered his report. The xenobiologist had spent the last week analyzing every piece of Velkari communication, and the results were more frustrating than anyone had imagined. They do not see this as a first contact scenario, he explained to the assembled representatives from across human space. Based on their linguistic patterns and cultural references, they view humanity as what they term a problematic species requiring intervention. They have compared us to at least 6 other races in their historical records, all of which were apparently subjected to similar treatment. Admiral Yoon Sora leaned forward in her chair. Her weathered face showed the strain of commanding human naval forces across 17 star systems while trying to figure out how to deal with aliens who refuse to take them seriously. What kind of intervention are we talking about, Doctor? Min-jun activated the holographic display and dozens of Velkari documents appeared in the air above the conference table. They have sent us approximately 12,000 pages of what they call educational guidance materials. Topics include proper resource management, sustainable population growth, appropriate territorial boundaries, and something they translate as constructive social development patterns. They sent us homework, muttered Captain Nam Soo-jin from her position at Wolf 359. She appeared via hologram since traveling to Earth would have taken her away from her duties protecting the outer colonies. Actual homework assignments. They want us to write essays on why aggressive expansion is harmful to galactic stability. The absurdity of the situation would have been funny if it were not so insulting. Humanity had spent 2 centuries fighting for survival and building a civilization that stretched across multiple star systems. They had developed technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics. They had created art and literature and music that captured the wonder of living among the stars. And now alien social workers wanted them to write book reports about why they should stay home and be quiet. It gets worse, Min-jun continued. They have begun what they call monitoring operations. In human space, Velkari ships have been detected at the edges of our systems. They are not attacking, but they are not leaving either. They just hover there, broadcasting educational content about proper galactic citizenship. Admiral Yoon called up tactical displays showing the locations of Velkari vessels. The alien ships were positioned like teachers watching over a playground full of unruly children. We have confirmed sightings in 14 systems. The ships appear to be observation platforms rather than warships, but they are definitely watching everything we do. What are they watching for? Asked President Lim Ha-Nul. The answer came from Captain Nam, whose frontier station had the most contact with the Velkari observers. They are monitoring our resource extraction operations, our territorial expansion, and our military exercises. Yesterday, one of their ships actually tried to escort our mining team away from an asteroid field because we were harvesting too aggressively for their standards. They told our miners they were being environmentally irresponsible, added Commander Oh Tae-yang from the Titan Defense Force. They wanted us to extract resources at half speed to minimize impact on the local space environment. When our people pointed out that asteroid fields are just rocks floating in vacuum, the Velkari representative lectured them about sustainable development practices. President Lim rubbed her temples. Leading humanity through first contact was supposed to be the greatest challenge of her career, but she had imagined dealing with conquerors or traitors or even hostile aliens. She had never prepared for aliens who wanted to give humanity a performance review. What is their endgame here? She asked. What do they actually want from us? Min-jun pulled up another set of documents. According to their cultural assessment, reports they believe humanity shows potential, but requires guidance to avoid the typical mistakes of newly spacefaring races. They have apparently dealt with hundreds of species over thousands of years, and they think they know exactly how our development should proceed. The breaking point came 2 weeks later when Velkari intervention ships appeared in the New Busan system. The agricultural world had been humanity's greatest terraforming success. What had once been a lifeless rock now supported 3 million people who grew food for colonies across human space. Children played in parks under blue skies while their parents worked in fields that stretched to the horizon. The Velkari decided New Busan was too close to a major trade route, and humanity was not ready for such prime real estate. Governor Park Kyung-min sent an emergency transmission to Earth. His usually calm demeanor had cracked under the strain of dealing with aliens who thought they knew what was best for his people. They want us to relocate the entire colony, all 3 million people. They say the planet is too valuable for a developing species, and that we would be happier on a world more appropriate for our current development level. What world do they suggest? Admiral Yoon asked, though she suspected she would not like the answer. A desert planet in the outer rim with no strategic value and limited resources. They call it a perfect learning environment for a species that needs to practice sustainable living before being trusted with better worlds. The silence that followed was broken by Captain Nam's bitter laugh. They want to send us to our room to think about what we have done. President Lim stood and walked to the viewport that showed Earth spinning slowly below. The blue marble that had given birth to humanity looked peaceful from orbit, but she knew the history carved into its surface, the wars and disasters and struggles that had forged humanity into what it was today. Her people had earned their place among the stars through blood and sweat and determination. They had proven themselves capable of surviving anything the universe could throw at them. Send a message to the Velkari, she said without turning around. Tell them we appreciate their concern, but humanity is not interested in relocating to make room for species they consider more deserving. Tell them we are not children who need guidance, and we are not tenants who can be evicted for the convenience of our landlords. She turned to face the council, and her expression was harder than steel. Tell them that if they want New Busan, they are going to have to take it from us, and remind them that humanity has been defending its home for a very long time. The message was sent within the hour. The Velkari response came back 3 days later, and it was not what anyone expected. They still did not understand. Ambassador Kang Ji-won had negotiated treaties with 17 different human factions during the Unity Wars. She had brokered peace agreements between colonies that had been shooting at each other for decades. She had sat across negotiating tables from warlords and terrorists and religious fanatics, and somehow found common ground with all of them. But nothing in her long diplomatic career had prepared her for the most surreal meeting of her life. The Velkari delegation had insisted on meeting aboard their ship, which they called a cultural integration vessel. The name alone should have warned her what she was walking into. The alien ship looked more like a university than a diplomatic vessel. Every surface was covered with educational displays showing proper development techniques for younger species. Holographic presentations played on loop demonstrating sustainable resource management and appropriate territorial expansion patterns. The Valkyrie themselves were even more frustrating than their ship. The lead negotiator had introduced itself through the translation matrix as helpful guide for younger species. Its multiple eye stalks moved independently as it spoke, creating the impression that it was constantly examining her for signs of proper understanding. The other members of their delegation had equally condescending titles like wise elder who teaches and patient instructor of difficult students. Your species shows great promise. Helpful guide explained in what the translation software rendered as a tone of benevolent concern. However, you require guidance to avoid the typical mistakes of newly spacefaring races. We have prepared a comprehensive development plan that will ensure your successful integration into galactic civilization. The development plan was a 47,000-page document that arrived in her personal tablet, with all the ceremony of a student receiving homework assignments. Kang had spent 3 sleepless days reading through the entire thing, and each page had made her more angry than the last. According to the Valkyrie, humanity would be restricted to 3 star systems for the next 500 years. All human settlements outside this designated area would need to be relocated to more appropriate worlds chosen by Valkyrie cultural advisors. The selection criteria seemed to focus on planets that were difficult to terraform and offered limited resources. When Kang asked about this, Helpful Guide explained that struggling with harsh environments would build character and teach humans proper appreciation for what they had. The military restrictions were even worse. All human weapons research would need approval from the Valkyrie Ethics Committee. Starships could only be armed with defensive systems, and even those had to be inspected annually by Valkyrie safety inspectors. The human military would be limited to police functions within their designated territory, and would require Valkyrie supervision for any operations involving more than 3 vessels. You must understand, patient instructor of difficult students interjected when Kang began to object to the military restrictions. Young species often develop aggressive tendencies as they expand into space. This is natural but dangerous. We have seen many promising civilizations destroy themselves through unchecked militarization. Our guidance will help you avoid such tragic mistakes. The population controls were perhaps the most insulting part of the plan. Human reproduction rates would be regulated to prevent what the Valkyrie called resource strain. Each human colony would be assigned a maximum population based on Valkyrie calculations of sustainable development. Families would need permits to have children, and those permits would only be granted to individuals who demonstrated proper understanding of galactic citizenship principles. But the most important aspect of your development plan, wise elder who teaches, continued, involves the education of your young. Human children will receive instruction from Valkyrie cultural specialists to ensure proper socialization. This will prevent the transmission of aggressive or inappropriate behaviors to future generations. Kang had sat through many difficult negotiations, but this was the first time she had ever wanted to reach across a table and strangle a diplomat. The aliens were not just trying to control humanity's expansion or military development. They wanted to reprogram human children to fit their idea of what a proper species should be. And if we refuse? She asked, keeping her voice as level as possible. The Valkyrie delegation exchanged what might have been meaningful glances among their various eye stalks. Helpful Guide responded with what the translation matrix rendered as disappointed concern. Refusal would be most unfortunate. We have established protocols for dealing with non-compliant species. Economic sanctions would be the first step. We would restrict your access to galactic trade networks and advanced technologies. If sanctions proved insufficient, we would implement technological restrictions, preventing your species from advancing beyond your current development level. And if that does not work, Kang pressed, quarantine, patient instructor of difficult. Students replied as if discussing the weather. Complete isolation until your species develops more appropriate attitudes toward galactic citizenship. We have found that a few centuries of isolation often help stubborn species reconsider their positions. The casual way they discussed imprisoning all of humanity made Kang's blood run cold. These aliens genuinely believed they had the right to cage an entire species for refusing to follow their development plan. They saw themselves as wise teachers dealing with unruly students rather than representatives of one species threatening another. "We sincerely hope it does not come to that," Helpful Guide continued. "Your species has potential. With proper guidance, you could become valued members of galactic civilization. But you must be willing to accept that guidance. You must trust that we know what is best for your development." The meeting ended without agreement. Kang had requested time to present the Velkari proposal to her government, though she already knew what the answer would be. As she prepared to leave the alien ship, wise elder who teaches approached her with what might have been kindly concern. "Please understand that we are not your enemies. We want to help your species reach its full potential, but that potential can only be achieved through proper development under appropriate guidance. We have seen too many promising civilizations destroy themselves through pride and stubbornness. We do not wish to see humanity suffer the same fate." Kang looked at the alien and realized that it genuinely believed every word it was saying. The Velkari were not evil conquerors trying to enslave humanity. They were self-appointed guardians who saw themselves as protecting a dangerous child species from its own destructive impulses, in some ways that made them more dangerous than any enemy humanity had ever faced. "Thank you for your time," she replied diplomatically. "I will present your proposal to my government." 3 days later, she stood before the United Human Council and delivered her report. The debate was fierce but mercifully brief. Representatives from across human space spoke with one voice about the Velkari offer. The answer was unanimous and unmistakable. President Lim Hanul stood to deliver humanity's response. "Send a message to the Velkari delegation. Tell them we appreciate their concern for our welfare, but we must respectfully decline their kind offer of supervision. Humanity has been governing itself for centuries, and we intend to continue doing so. We are not children in need of guidance. We are an independent species seeking peaceful coexistence with our galactic neighbors." She paused and looked around the chamber at the faces of humans who had spent their lives building civilization among the stars. "Tell them that if they want to be our friends, we welcome their friendship. If they want to be our allies, we are open to alliance. But if they insist on being our parents, they are going to discover that humanity is all grown up, and we do not respond well to being grounded." The message was sent within the hour. The Velkari response revealed the true scope of the problem humanity faced. They did not see humans as equals choosing a different path. They saw rebellious children throwing a dangerous tantrum, and they had protocols for dealing with such situations. The real conflict was about to begin. Commander Yang stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched something that should have been impossible. Velkari intervention ships were systematically disrupting human supply lines across 3 star systems, and they were doing it with the casual efficiency of adults taking toys away from children they considered too young to play safely. The aliens were not attacking in any conventional sense. They were intervening for humanity's own good, and somehow that made their actions even more infuriating than open warfare would have been. Trade ships carrying medical supplies to frontier colonies were being escorted back to their origin points by Velkari vessels broadcasting lectures about sustainable commerce practices. Mining operations that had fed human industry for decades were being shut down by alien inspectors who declared them environmentally harmful. Resource gatherers found themselves blocked from asteroid fields that Velkari cultural advisors had designated as preservation zones. "Sir, we have another situation developing in the Centauri system," reported Communications Officer Lee Sun-hee. 3 Velkari ships have surrounded the New Geneva freight convoy. They are demanding that the cargo manifest be submitted for review before the ships are allowed to proceed. Taiyang pulled up the tactical display and studied the positions of the alien vessels. Each Velkari ship was roughly twice the size of a human destroyer, but their energy signatures suggested they were equipped for crowd control rather than combat. The aliens had obviously never encountered a species that might actually fight back against their benevolent intervention. "What is the New Geneva convoy carrying?" he asked. medical equipment and food supplies for the Outer Rim colonies. Sun He replied. The Velkari are claiming that unrestricted resource distribution encourages unhealthy dependence patterns in developing species. The absurdity of the situation made Taiyang want to laugh if it were not so potentially deadly. The Outer Rim colonies depended on regular supply runs to survive. Families had children who needed medicine and food that could only be produced on the agricultural worlds closer to human space. The Velkari were essentially trying to starve people for their own good. "Open a channel to the Velkari ships," he ordered. The response came in the now familiar condescending tone that every human had learned to hate. "Greetings, Commander O Taiyang. I am gentle corrector of inappropriate behavior. We are currently educating your cargo vessels about proper resource management protocols. Please do not interfere with this necessary learning experience." Taiyang took a deep breath and tried to keep his voice level. "Gentle corrector, the supplies those ships are carrying include medicine for sick children and food for families, on worlds that cannot produce enough to feed themselves. Your intervention could result in people dying. Your concern for your people is admirable but misguided," the alien replied. "Excessive resource distribution prevents the development of local self-sufficiency. These colonies must learn to provide for themselves rather than depending on constant support from more developed worlds. Short-term hardship will lead to long-term strength." The casual way the alien dismissed human suffering as a learning experience pushed Taiyang past his breaking point. "You are not helping anyone. You are putting innocent people at risk to satisfy your own sense of superiority. Commander, your emotional response demonstrates exactly why your species requires guidance. You are thinking only of immediate gratification rather than long-term development goals. This is typical behavior for younger species, but it must be corrected before it becomes entrenched." The channel closed, leaving Taiyang staring at empty space while the Velkari ships continued to prevent human cargo vessels from delivering desperately needed supplies. He looked around his bridge at officers whose faces showed the same frustrated rage he felt burning in his chest. The situation was escalating across human space. On New Sol, Captain Nam Sujin reported that Velkari agricultural inspectors had declared human farming methods unsustainable and were demanding that crop yields be reduced by 60% to prevent soil depletion. The fact that human agricultural techniques had been developed specifically for the soil conditions on New Sol seemed irrelevant to aliens who had never bothered to study human science before deciding it was wrong. In the Wolf 359 system, Velkari cultural advisors had arrived at the research station and announced that 17 different human scientific projects violated galactic safety protocols. The projects in question included stellar mapping surveys and asteroid composition studies that posed no danger to anyone. But the Velkari insisted that unsupervised research by a developing species was inherently risky. Dr. Song Yoon-hee, director of the Human Defense Research Division, delivered her analysis to an emergency meeting of military commanders from across human space. The scientist had spent her career developing weapons systems that kept human colonies safe from the dangers of frontier space. Her latest report painted a picture that was both encouraging and deeply disturbing. "The Velkari have somehow completely misunderstood the nature of military conflict," she explained to the assembled officers. "Their ships are equipped with non-lethal crowd control systems designed to pacify unruly populations. They have energy dampeners that can disable electronics and tractor beam arrays that can immobilize smaller vessels, but they appear to have no actual weapons." Admiral Yoon Sora leaned forward. "Are you saying they cannot fight?" "I am saying they do not know how to fight," Yoon-hee replied. "Their technology is more advanced than ours in many ways, but it is entirely focused on control and education rather than destruction. They keep sending us disarmament treatises and energy efficiency guides while positioning their fleets around our colonies like school teachers surrounding a playground." The implications were staggering. Humanity had spent centuries becoming very good at warfare because the universe was a dangerous place, filled with natural disasters and hostile environments, and the constant threat of extinction. The Velkari apparently lived in such a safe and controlled galactic community that they had forgotten what actual conflict looked like. They genuinely do not understand that their actions constitute acts of war. Yunhee continued. In their experience, problematic species submit to guidance rather than fighting back. They have protocols for economic sanctions and technological restrictions and eventual quarantine, but they seem to have no contingency plans for species that respond to condescension with violence. The breaking point came when Velkari intervention. Forces attempted to relocate the entire population of New Sol. The agricultural world that fed half of human space was declared unsuitable for a developing species, and the VAR, 3 million people who lived there, were ordered to evacuate to a desert world in the outer rim that the aliens considered more appropriate for humanity's current development level. Captain Ro In-soo commanded the colony defense force that consisted of 6 destroyers and a handful of patrol craft. She had spent 15 years protecting New Sol from pirates and natural disasters, and alien social workers were not going to force her people from their homes without a fight. The message she broadcast to the Velkari intervention fleet became legendary throughout human space within hours. This is Captain Ro In-soo of the New Sol Defense Force. We have received your relocation order, and we have carefully considered your concerns about our suitability for this world. After thorough deliberation, we have reached a unanimous decision. You can take our planet from us when you pry it from our cold, dead hands. We are not moving. We are not submitting to your educational programs. We are not accepting your guidance. We are staying right here. And if you try to force us to leave, you will discover that humans are much better at fighting than you think we are. She paused and looked around her bridge at officers who had volunteered to defend their families and their homes against anyone who threatened them. We are not asking for your permission to live on our own world. We are not requesting your approval of our farming methods. We are telling you to leave us alone or face the consequences. You have exactly 24 hours to withdraw your ships from New Sol space before we start shooting. We are not mad. We are just frustrated and armed, and we are done being polite about it. The Velkari response revealed the true scope of their misunderstanding. They actually seemed confused by the idea that humans might fight back against their well-intentioned intervention. Their final transmission before the shooting started was perhaps the most alien thing any human had ever heard. We do not understand your hostile reaction. We are trying to help you. Why are you making this so difficult? The first real battle between humans and aliens lasted exactly 17 minutes and was almost embarrassingly one-sided. The Velkari, who had spent centuries believing that their superior wisdom made them untouchable, discovered that wisdom was not much protection against missiles fired by people who were tired of being talked down to. Captain Ro In-soo watched from the bridge of her flagship as the single Velkari intervention ship approached New Sol with the same casual confidence it had shown for weeks. The alien vessel was broadcasting educational materials about proper conflict resolution and the benefits of accepting guidance from more experienced species right up until the moment 3 human destroyers opened fire on it from 3 different directions. The Velkari ship was not defenseless, but its weapons were designed to disable and control rather than destroy. Energy dampeners that could shut down electronics were useless against hardened military systems. Tractor beams meant to immobilize. Cargo ships could not stop missiles traveling at relativistic speeds. The aliens had brought crowd control tools to a real fight, and the results were as predictable as they were devastating. Velkari vessel is disabled, sir, reported Weapons Officer Park Hyun-woo. Their main systems are offline, but life support appears intact. Ro nodded with satisfaction. Send boarding teams. I want to know exactly what these people thought they were doing. The wreckage of the alien ship revealed the true scope of Velkari misunderstanding. Their computers contained detailed files on hundreds of species that had been subjected to similar intervention programs over thousands of years. Every single case had followed the same pattern. The Velkari would identify a problematic younger species, impose restrictions and guidance programs, and eventually achieve compliance through economic pressure and technological limitations. Not one of the files contained any reference to military resistance. The aliens had never encountered a species that responded to condescension by shooting back. Commander Oh Tae-yang studied the captured Velkari data with a mixture of fascination and disgust. They have been doing this for millennia. Every spacefaring race in their sphere of influence has been subjected to some form of intervention and guidance program. They genuinely believe this is how galactic civilization is supposed to work. Dr. Song Yoon-hee had spent 3 days analyzing Velkari technology, and her findings were both encouraging and disturbing. Their ships are more advanced than ours in terms of propulsion and energy efficiency, but they are completely vulnerable to conventional weapons. They have no armor beyond basic hull plating, no point defense systems, no combat maneuvering capabilities. They are essentially floating classrooms equipped with crowd control devices. The implications were staggering. The Velkari had become so secure in their role as galactic peacekeepers that they had forgotten other species might actually fight back. They had built a civilization based on the assumption that superior wisdom and good intentions were all the protection they needed. Admiral Park Kyung-min arrived at the Velkari homeworld 3 months after the Battle of New Seoul with a human fleet that represented the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. 12 battleships supported by 30 destroyers and twice as many support vessels jumped into the system and immediately began broadcasting a message that was heard across the galaxy. This is Admiral Park Kyung-min of the United Human Navy. We are not here to conquer your world or destroy your civilization. We are here to have an actual conversation between equals. We request that your leaders meet with our representatives to discuss peaceful coexistence based on mutual respect, rather than unilateral intervention. The response took 6 hours to arrive, and when it came, it was not from military commanders or government officials. The Velkari sent their cultural advisors and educational specialists because they still did not understand that this was a military situation requiring political solutions. Elder who speaks for many appeared on the main view screen of Admiral Park's flagship, with all the dignity of someone who had spent centuries dispensing wisdom to grateful younger species. The alien's multiple eye stalks moved nervously as it took in the sight of human warships surrounding its homeworld. We did not understand. Elder who speaks admitted in what the translation matrix rendered as confused distress. In our experience, newly spacefaring species are either too aggressive and must be contained, or too passive and require guidance. Your species appears to be neither. We are frustrated, Ambassador Kang Ji-won replied from her position beside Admiral Park. We have been fighting for our survival and our right to exist as a free species for centuries. We do not need parents or guardians or teachers. We need neighbors who respect our choices even when they disagree with them. The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in human diplomatic history. The Velkari had to completely relearn how to interact with a species that refused to be patronized. Human representatives had to explain concepts like sovereign equality and mutual respect to aliens who had never encountered species capable of enforcing those principles. Your people have been intervening in the development of other races for thousands of years, Admiral Park pointed out during one particularly tense session. How many species have you prevented from reaching their full potential because you decided they needed guidance instead of freedom? Elder who speaks for many was quiet for a long time before responding. We believed we were helping them. We have prevented wars and resource conflicts and technological disasters. We have guided civilizations towards sustainable development and peaceful coexistence. You have also prevented them from making their own mistakes and learning their own lessons, Kang replied. You have created a galaxy full of species that depend on your approval for everything they do. That is not civilization. That is a nursery. The final agreement took weeks of careful negotiation to hammer out. Humanity would be recognized as an independent species with full rights to expand and develop as they chose. The Velkari would withdraw their intervention forces and stop trying to regulate human activities. In exchange, humans agreed to respect the territorial claims of other species and submit to mediation by neutral parties in case of conflicts. Most importantly, the treaty established humanity as what the document called a monitored independent species. The Velkari would continue watching human activities, but they would only intervene if humanity threatened other species. No more homework assignments, no more educational programs, no more lectures about proper development patterns. Captain Kim, Hansel signed the treaty aboard his ship while representatives from both species watched. The ceremony was broadcast across human space and throughout the Velkari sphere of influence. As he put his name on the document that guaranteed humanity's freedom, He looked up at the mixed fleet of human and alien vessels visible through the viewport. "Think they have learned their lesson?" he asked Communications Officer Park Ji-ho, who had been with him since the beginning of this strange conflict. Park grinned for the first time in months. "Well, they stopped sending us homework assignments. I would call that progress." The treaty signing marked the beginning of a new era in galactic politics. Other species that had been subjected to Velkari guidance programs began demanding similar recognition of their independence. The aliens, who had spent millennia believing they knew what was best for everyone, slowly began to learn that wisdom and good intentions were not sufficient justification for controlling other people's lives. Humanity took its place in the galactic community not as pupils or subjects, but as the neighbors they had always wanted to be, armed and independent and ready to defend their right to be frustratingly human. The galaxy would never be quite the same.